How are you doing? Thank God you're here because today you're going to find out why what I just did could be a reason that Danes don't like you. That's right, today we're going to talk about 9 simple culture clashes that could be the reason that Danes don't like you. Now, we're going to tell you our personal experiences about things that we did when we first moved to Denmark that kept Danes from liking us. But now they do, so we'll tell you how we turned that around. Let's get started.
Welcome to Road Trotting. We're Derek and Mike, an American couple who moved from the US to Copenhagen in 2017. Our channel is all about living abroad and traveling the world. Every Thursday, we drop our most candid advice and tips based on our lives as expats and explorers. For more, be sure to visit our companion site, roadtrotting.com, with a link in the description below. Before we begin, we just want to clear up that Danes will like you. Sometimes they get an unfounded reputation for being difficult to meet, but in our experience, that's just not true.
That's right. Danes are always going to give you a chance, but it's important that you remember you're not in your home country, so you have to do things a little bit different. Now let's get into it and find out why Danes may not like you and what you can do about it. Here we go.
Not to brag, but I'm going to tell you one of the main reasons why Danes aren't going to like you. And that's because you brag too much. Now, both of us are American, so we're used to talking up our successes. But there's a fine line where American confidence comes across as American arrogance. And in Denmark, that's a big no-no. Scandinavian culture is known for being egalitarian in nature and has a high focus on equality. This is probably best expressed in something known as Janteloven, or the law of Jante. Janteloven is a series of 10 rules that dictate how you're supposed to act amongst a group. It's best exemplified in the phrase, "You are no better than us." Now, Janteloven was originally written as a satire of the behavior of small towns, but it's kind of been infused as an exemplar of Danish culture. And it describes why Danes should be modest, humble, and by all means should not stand out. The idea that you shouldn't brag extends into many other areas as well. One of the big ones is money. Danes never talk about money. In the US, we have a thing known as conspicuous consumption, where you buy fancy things to show them off. In Denmark, people certainly have nice things in their homes or may live in an expensive apartment, but they'll always talk it down by saying, "Oh, I got a really good deal on it," or "I bought it secondhand." And modesty extends to other areas as well. For example, the Danish national dress for work is generally a crisp white shirt and dark pants for men, and a black or dark blouse for women. Generally anything not too flashy. So when you come to Denmark, we're not saying that you have to fade into the background, but you certainly should make an effort not to stand out too much.
Now, one reason why Danes may not like you is if you overuse the phrase, "How are you doing?" Now, I know to American ears this sounds like it's just a greeting, but to Danes it can be like nails on a chalkboard. You see, at best, it's going to sound like a confusing question that they don't really know how to answer. But at its worst, it can be overly personal and just a bit inappropriate. Now, it's important to note that the Danish language, culture, and sense of humor is much more direct than its American counterparts. So the only way that a Dane is truly going to answer this question is with, well, a truthful answer. So you're going to hear things back like, "Well, my knee hurts today," or, "Oh, I got in a fight with my wife last night." And that's not necessarily what you want to get into when you're greeting someone. Now, I know Americans simply want an answer like, "I'm fine, how about you?" So to a Dane, that may come off as a little bit fake or superficial because you're asking a question that you really don't want an answer to. That's kind of rude if you think about it. Now, Danes are very aware of American English and they speak it well, so often they're just going to have some fun with you and act like they don't know how to answer this question. But remember, it can come off as an invasion of privacy and you don't want to do that. Instead, I recommend using a Danish phrase, which is "Hvordan går det?" Literally, that translates to "How's it going?" It's a little more gentle and appropriate. But keep in mind, this is something that you want to say when you actually intend to start a conversation with somebody. So don't use it in passing, but maybe use it when you arrive to work and meet up with your coworkers around the coffee machine. Then it's much more appropriate to say, "How's it going?" That's what I've switched to, but you can always start with a simple "Hi" and just see how things go.
So another way that you're definitely going to have Danes not like you is when you speak Danish, or don't speak Danish. It's kind of complicated. As soon as you move to Denmark, you're going to start hearing questions like, "How are you getting along with your Danish?" Sounds like an easy question, right? For one, Danes love when a non-Dane has interest in their culture, their country, or their language, so they sincerely appreciate it when non-Danes try to speak Danish. Second, Danes realize there's 5.8 million Danish speakers in the entire world, and all of them live here. And third, Danes are fiercely proud of their country, their culture, and their language. And so there's an expectation that things will be done in Denmark in Danish. Not every situation is the place where you want to practice your Danish. For one, if you're in a coffee shop or a busy store, that's not the right place to go use one of the workers there as your study buddy. But still, don't be afraid to try. You need to practice to get better. But at the same time, realize you're going to hear very often, can we just take this in English? It's not that they're being rude. It's that sometimes it's just easier to use a language that is common to both of you. And so there's always an easy out. And that's something that we've struggled with ourselves. It's easy to just fall into English and not force yourself to learn Danish. And honestly, we feel a little bit guilty and a little bit ashamed for not being better with our Danish after living here for 4 years. So that's why we ask you guys to keep us honest on our journey to fluency and make sure you hold us into account in the comments below. And also, we ask you Danes to please show us a little bit of love, even though the way that we say rødbrød will never sound good and will always make your ears bleed.
Now, another reason why Danes may not like you is if you don't bring them gifts. And I'm not saying you need to lavish them with presents every time you see them. But what does go a long way is if you go to a Danish person's home for the first time, you bring a little host gift. This can be a bottle of wine or some chocolates. A little gift set like this goes a long way in establishing your friendship. Another tip is to follow up that meeting with a text message or reaching out on social media to say that you had a lovely time. Even if it's somebody that isn't the host, you might want to send them a message if you enjoyed chatting with them and would like to follow up with coffee or getting to know them a little bit better. This can be a little awkward to Americans who might not normally do that, but going the extra mile with a Dane will pay off. However, make sure that if you do follow up and make plans to grab coffee, you're not just saying it, that you're actually doing it. The onus is going to be on you to follow up and make that plan with the person that you reached out to. Right, Mike?
That's right, Derek. If you're going to say, let's meet up again, you better make sure you actually follow through on that, or else you're going to have a Dane not like you. Following through on commitments is good manners no matter what the culture is. But this is another case where American informality and Danish directness come into a little bit of cultural conflict. In American English, it's really common to end a conversation by saying, that was so nice, we should meet up again, but not necessarily having intentions to make firm plans. In Denmark, when you say something like that, that means that you're making a little bit of a commitment to meet up again. And there's an expectation, if you're going to put that on the table, you're actually going to make plans and follow through. Part of this is because Danes are planners. When you say something might happen in the future, their ears perk up because they're expecting the next conversation to be, let's meet up in week 27. So to Danish ears, why would you bring up the possibility of meeting again if you have no intention to do so? And honestly, thinking about it preparing for this video, we realize it's kind of ridiculous the way that we've always acted in conversation before. I mean, why would you say, let's meet again if you're not actually thinking about meeting again? So this is one area where we sometimes fall back into our old bad habits, but we really make an effort to try to follow through if we say something like, let's go ahead and meet again in the future.
Now, one possible reason why Danes don't like you is that you're always late, or even early. See, in Scandinavia and Northern Europe, promptness is a social virtue. We're not used to this because in America, if I tell you, come over to my place anytime after 7 p.m., that means come after 7 p.m., but not at 7 p.m. 7:30 is fine, 7:45, even 8 p.m. is good. We're fine with that. But don't come at 7. However, in Denmark, that means come at 7 or else you're being a little bit rude. Now, we discovered this phenomenon the hard way. We made plans for brunch. We planned to start at noon and figured, okay, the food should be ready sometime around 12, maybe even 12:15, 12:30. We were pretty surprised when the door buzzer rang right at 12 o'clock sharp. We were certainly not ready. We didn't expect anybody to actually show up at noon. We kind of figured it was going to be a casual brunch, you know, the come over anytime after 12 p.m. type of brunch we used to have in Philadelphia. Not quite the same thing in Copenhagen. Now, I also mentioned not to be early, and this is very true. You see, if somebody invites you over at 7 p.m., they really want you there at 7 p.m. If you show up at 6:45, it's pretty rude because they're going to be getting ready, making preparations for the event. This is especially true in business. Let's say you have your first interview for a job in Denmark, and it's scheduled for 11 a.m. If you're ready and at the building at 10:45, do not go in. Go next door, grab a cup of coffee, walk around the building, maybe ride your bike around for a little bit. Do anything except for go in and say that you're there 15 minutes early. Now, there's this silly expression in American business that if you're 15 minutes early, you're on time, and if you're on time, you're late. Forget that and leave it at passport control, because that doesn't apply in Denmark. But speaking of which, I've got somewhere to be.
While Derek runs off, let me tell you, if you want to piss off a Dane, don't follow the biking rules. Denmark is a well-known cycling country, and that's because it has a flat geography and a really well-maintained biking infrastructure. All over the country, you'll find what looks like bike superhighways with wide lanes and traffic lights for bikes alone to make sure there's always a good flow, even during rush hour. But the system only works if everyone's following the same rules. And the rules are actually pretty simple, but you'd be surprised how many people don't follow them, and you will always make sure that you get a nice ring of the bell and a stern look if you don't follow the rules. Probably the biggest rule is make sure you respect the fast lane and the slow lane. Just like a 4-lane highway, there's a left side and a right side, and you should always be passing on the left and riding on the right. All too often you'll see people riding side by side or just hanging out on the left side of the bike lane, and it's a big no-no here. Again, if you do that, you'll hear a ring of the bell and get a look as someone goes past you. Also, make sure you follow the biking signals. They're pretty simple here. If you're going to stop, put your arm up, showing that you're going to stop. If you want to go left, point left. If you're going right, point right. You'd be surprised how many people don't do this, and it really pisses people off behind you. And one last thing to remember is that your bike needs to be in good order. The biggest thing is to make sure that you have lights in the front and the back. And if the lights go out, it's no big deal. They sell lights in grocery stores and convenience stores all over the place, so you have no reason not to have your lights working.
Now, another reason that the Danes don't like you is if you talk to them and don't know them first. What I'm trying to say is avoid small talk. If you don't know somebody, leave them alone. Now, as Americans, this took us a little bit of getting used to, but we've actually found that we quite enjoy it now. See, Americans are very outgoing, but the tendency to talk to people that don't actually know you can come off as a little bit superficial, if not really weird. Now, in Denmark, if you're waiting in line for a cup of coffee or at a store, or if you're waiting for a bus, just don't talk to anybody that you don't already know. This may be acceptable in the US, but in Denmark, small talk should be reserved for people that you actually know. Now, when you do need to engage in small talk, let's say you're meeting somebody for the first time, stick to topics that are light and inoffensive. My suggestion when you're in Denmark and need to make small talk is go to the weather. See, it's always either really good or really bad. It also changes frequently, so weather is the constant trending topic that you can use for small talk. Just don't do it with strangers.
Now, another way you can piss off a Dane is if you wear outside shoes inside. Now, we heard in the comments that some of you couldn't believe that in the US we'd actually wear outside shoes inside the house. And while it's not true all the time, and you usually take your shoes off when you come inside, if you're hosting a party or some people over to your house, you probably wouldn't make them take their shoes off. But in Denmark, you absolutely do. If you come over to anybody's house, you'll see a big pile of shoes when you walk in the door, because that's what you do. You take your shoes off. And honestly, it makes sense. This is a country where it rains almost every single day, so you don't want to track in mud and dirt from the outside into these homes. And you'll see people switch from, say, outside shoes to inside shoes at work. If people walk or bike to work, they'll usually have grubby shoes they wear on the way in and then change their nice shoes once they get into the office. Where this is probably the most militant is in locker rooms. When you go to a gym or a pool, you'll see distinct areas where you're allowed to wear outside shoes and inside shoes. And if you violate this, somebody will definitely tell you that you're wrong.
Well, there you have it. 9 things that you should avoid if you don't want to piss off the Danes. Now, I think with these tips, Danes will like you. So if you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel so you can find all of our tips every Thursday when we drop our new videos. Until then,
Skål!
Skål!